All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our first official webinar for the Texas Southern University Breast Cancer Screening and Prevention Center. We have an exciting program lined up and some very exciting speakers that are with us today. So I'm going to share my screen and introduce our guests to you. I am super excited to be able to talk to these ladies, and I'm going to actually refer to them as baddies if, if you guys don't mind, and I will explain why in just a moment. So today we want to talk about the importance of screenings and early detection in breast cancer. Our grant is funded by the Cancer Prevention and Research Institute of Texas, and we are based out of Texas Southern University. My name is Dr. Uche Ndefo, and I am a pharmacist and a professor of clinical pharmacy at Texas Southern University. I just want to thank everyone for being here. Please remember to remain muted throughout the presentation. There will be a question and answer session at the end, and you can post your questions in the chat box during the presentation, because if you may forget that you have a question or what your question was at the end, and you'll be able to ask your question of our baddies. Now, let me explain the word baddies and why I'm calling these beautiful ladies that are on here with us today baddies. So the organization that these ladies have come to us from is called For the Breast of Us. And their statement is as follows: a cancer diagnosis changes everything. As a woman of color, where do you go and who do you turn to when you are in the midst of the fight of your life? You search online for stories and images of women who've gone through treatment and look like you, but you find little to nothing. Maybe you scroll down your timeline on social media hoping to see a glimmer of hope in the face of other fighters and survivors, but you still yearn for something more. That's where For the Breast of Us comes in. Our mission is to empower women of color affected by breast cancer to make the rest of their lives the best of their lives through education, advocacy, and community. With that, I would like to start by introducing Ms. Cynthia Johnson. She is the Director for Administration and Assessment at the Texas Southern University College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences, and she is a baddie ambassador with For the Breast of Us. We do have a survey. If you don't mind completing this survey for us, Ms. Pearl, if you are available, if you can put the link to the survey in the chat box, please. We do have an English and Spanish version for the survey, and we just really want to ask what you know about breast cancer with the survey. So it's nothing serious. If you are an attendee and you want to help us out by just letting us know what you know before our presentation and what you know after the presentation, that would be really helpful for us. All right, so as you can see today, we have 4 speakers, and these women are all baddies and are all part of For the Breast of Us. And they all have unique stories, unique breast cancer stories that we will all get the opportunity to hear them talk about. We do have bibliographies for each of them or brief bios for each of them. But to be honest, I'd rather they just told us. I could read it, but what do y'all think? I feel like it would be better if you told us just your breast cancer story versus me reading some words on paper. Yes? Is that okay? Perfect. Okay. So I will start with Ms. Johnson. Ms. Johnson, like I said, is our Director for Administration and Assessment for the College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences. And Cynthia, if you don't mind just telling us a little bit about yourself and your breast cancer journey.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me. As quite a few of you know, I am Cynthia, the Miss Do It All here in the college, so you've all seen and received many emails from me. But some of you don't know that I am indeed a breast cancer baddie and a survivor. I was diagnosed with stage 2 invasive ductal carcinoma in 2018 when I was tender young age of 39. So for those who don't know, that is 1 full year before I would have been scheduled to begin routine mammograms. And so as this seminar will tell you, early diagnosis, self-exams, and routine screenings can sometimes make all of the difference. And so I'm grateful that I was able to be diagnosed and begin treatment and be on this wonderful journey now. And I guess we'll get into it a little bit more, but I'm so excited to be here with my baddie sisters this evening and educate and advocate. That's what we do.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. I want to highlight her mantra. If you've got to go through it, glow through it. And she truly does that. You know, you wouldn't think that there would be a lot of crises in you know, pharmacy school, but we have our share of it, and she definitely glows through it. And I turn to her a lot because I call her a resource person, because she just has the resources for sort of anything and everything that you want to do. So I am sure that her advocacy for breast cancer definitely shines through in everything that she does. All right, and our next guest today is Miss Miranda Gonzalez. So Miranda, do you mind introducing yourself to us a little bit?
Sure, thanks for having me. It's so lovely to see all my beautiful baddie sisters. It's been a little while since we've seen each other. My name is Miranda. I am born and raised in Houston, Texas. I was a stay-at-home mom for quite a few years until I received my diagnosis. I actually found the lump at 39. I was misdiagnosed by my doctor and went back 6 months later and was diagnosed at stage 3. So just kind of hearing that story, that it's very common actually for women under 40 to be kind of dismissed by their doctors if they have no history of breast cancer, because they're too young. Doctors don't think that it's going to happen. They don't need mammograms. So part of what my mission is for the rest of us is just letting women and doctors know that it doesn't matter what age you are. We have women in our group who are in their early 20s all the way up to their 50s. Just teaching women to advocate for themselves, to make sure that they are getting the care and also getting the tests and just the treatment from doctors that they deserve.
Thank you so much, Miranda. I think when I read through your statement, the feeling out of place during treatment and walking into, you know, the waiting room, and there's nobody in there that looks like you or is the same age as you, and you're wondering, how am I here, right? So when I saw that, I definitely felt that, because there's nothing worse than feeling out of place. But when you're going through something so serious, sort of feeling out of place and feeling alone in that journey must have not been easy. So I'm so glad that y'all have, you know, gotten together to create this support system for other women to feel supported and seen. Thank you so much. And next we have Miss Nadia Smith. Did I pronounce it properly?
It's Nadia. Hello,
Nadia. Hello, Nadia. I went one of two ways and I picked the wrong one.
Usually your first choice is the right one, but you overthink it.
Right one, then you overthink it. Hello,
Okay.
Nadia. So nice to meet you. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Hello.
Tell us
Thank you all for joining me.
Yes, please go for it.
Well, thank you, the baddies, for joining me, and everybody else on the call. So thank you for joining and wanting to hear our stories and hear how you can advocate and for yourself and some education around breast cancer awareness. So at the age of 33, I was diagnosed in 2016 with ductal carcinoma in situ, which is an early stage breast cancer, but it was a shock. So I had no known history of breast cancer. And I was checking all the boxes for those things that we're going to talk about later in this webinar about what you can do to decrease your risk of breast cancer. But I was very healthy. I was actually diagnosed 6 days after running a half marathon. So I was doing the things. I was living the healthy lifestyle. I was moving my body at least 30 minutes a day. But I was diagnosed, and like Miranda mentioned in her bio, I went from appointment after appointment, and no one looked like me, and I felt alone. And I questioned the standard of care. So many of the things that were presented to me in my treatment plan were maybe presented for women that were older, someone that was married, but I was young, I was healthy, and I was unwed, and I didn't have children. So there were some choices that I wanted to be presented to me that were not, some were and some were not at the time. So I found for the rest of us looking for a community, for someone to talk through these issues with. And so these group of women, we all have unique stories, but we all help each other in understanding how we get to health equality and how we get to a better quality of life for thrivers, survivors, and all of their family caregivers that are impacted by this disease. So my voice grew from there. I've been participating in many things through the Breast of Us and also other organizations, just letting them know that this disease does not discriminate, and there's so much work that needs to be done, not just for the survivors, but for our future generations as well.
Okay, I was muted, but I think you guys all saw the wow that I said, even though I was muted, because 33, right? 33 years old. You're not even 40 yet still, like.
This year, this is the big year. So 40 is coming up. So this is the year where my journey with screening should start. And I will mention that my journey started a year before the diagnosis, after pushing for 2 mammograms because I found my lump and I had to advocate for myself for those screenings.
Wow. No, thank you for sharing that. That's something to really pay attention to, something for us to really think about, because if you found lumps at 32 and you found something, starting at 40 is possibly too late for some people, at least, even if it's not for everyone. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And then I would like to introduce Miss April.
Hello, everybody. My name is April Finley, and I am a 5-year breast cancer survivor. I was diagnosed at the age of 35 with stage 2 invasive ductal carcinoma, triple negative, BRCA1 positive. I have an extensive family history of breast cancer and reproductive cancers. And I was the first grandchild to be diagnosed. And within the last 5 years, 4 of my first cousins have also been diagnosed with either breast or reproductive cancer. So that's how prevalent it is in my family. I too was dismissed by my doctor, although I had a family history and she was well aware of that. I just continued to advocate for myself for testing. So here I am. And the reason that I am here is because, like my sisters, there weren't many women that I could find that looked like me who were under the age of 40, premenopausal, no children, who had been diagnosed with breast cancer, also BRCA1 positive. So I made a commitment that I would use my voice to share my story, because there's a lot of shame around a breast cancer or any kind of health disparity. So I wanted to share my story and just show that, it's not always, a death sentence that's associated with a cancer diagnosis. A lot of us are surviving and thriving, and also talking about taking the steps that we need to take to have early detection, as far as doing our monthly checks, doing our yearly exams. So that's me in a nutshell. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much, April. What part of South Carolina are you from?
I currently live in Columbia, South Carolina, but I am a Georgia peach. I'm originally from Brunswick, Georgia.
Okay, I'm a Gamecock.
So
I said I'm a Gamecock, and my parents taught at North Carolina State. So I lived in Orangeburg. Yes, ma'am. Very familiar with the area.
okay, I'm a graduate of the South Carolina State University. I am a loyal daughter.
Yes, yes. I knew I liked you just by your picture, actually. Got a
Thank
chance
you.
to talk. Okay, so ladies, here is what's standing out the most to me. You are all educated women, and you still had she's a PhD candidate, like she has a master, she has, and April, you're a high school counselor, y'all are very well educated women, and you still had to fight to have anybody sort of listen to you. And I do wonder for other women who are not as educated, who were not as informed, who don't maybe have a voice as strong as you do, what advice would you give someone who maybe thinks, breast cancer, but really every health issue? What advice would you give them to be able to have these conversations with their healthcare providers, who I'm sure want them to be well, right? How should they approach these conversations? And Cynthia, I'll start with you.
I'll be honest in saying I didn't always have a voice. And especially at the start of something like this, it's jarring. You kind of don't even know which way is up. But you very quickly learn to say what needs to be said and ask for what you need. And I would say, much like with anything else in life, when one door is closed, you go knock on another. And it's probably one of the most important things you can do is to find that care team that you think rocks with you, understands you, listens to you, explains things in a way that you get, and that you just really, really feel like they have your best interest at heart. And so to me, that is as many second, third, fourth opinions, interviews, like you really kind of have to find that care team that fits your needs. Otherwise, I can't imagine what my journey would have been like.
April, can you tell us a little bit about, what you think is the best way to advocate for yourself?
I think the first step in advocacy is knowing your family history. When you're going to the doctor, the first thing they do is they ask you about your family history. It's either in the paperwork that you fill out before you go, or it's the first 15 minutes of your visit. They're asking you all of these questions. You have to know what is happening with your family in order to be able to share that information with your doctors. So you have to be able to have those courageous conversations, because once again, in communities of color, we don't talk about what happened to Auntie, what did she die from? Or did grandma have cancer? Those are things that we don't discuss. Having those conversations and writing it down and taking that information with you to the doctor, and not only stopping there, but making sure that other relatives in your family has that information as well. This summer, I am having a family reunion. Well, my family is having a family reunion. And one of the conversations we're going to have is that everybody's going to jot down family health history. So that way, when they return to their doctors, they can give that information in case there's a need for genetics testing to determine if they're at risk for any type of cancers. Finding out how close within the line it is, because potentially they could qualify for free testing. So in my opinion, the first step to advocacy is first knowing what you're advocating for, knowing your family history and making sure that your family is also aware of that and sharing that information.
Wow. So the family reunion thing and doing the history is so important because at least, so I'm Nigerian, and the way we do things, people die from natural causes, old age. Like there is no specific anything when someone dies. So like the whole obituary will be like, and this person died of natural causes. What is that? What does that mean? Especially when I get that if they're like 102 when they die, but if somebody dies when they're 50 or whatever, we need more information. That was not natural causes. Tell us more. That is so powerful, being able to sort of, take the time to figure out that family history so that we can know what we're advocating for, like you said. Okay, Miranda, can you tell us a little bit about your experience with advocacy as well?
Kind of like Cynthia, I didn't really have a voice or even know what to ask when I first found my lump. And as I had mentioned, the doctor said that I was young, I didn't have a history. He could order a mammogram if I wanted. Granted, this was a gynecologist I've had for 20 years. And, I thought, he's been to college, he's been doing this, he's a doctor, he's well-versed, I'm gonna go with what he says. And as I said, 6 months later, I found another lump, and that kind of started the process. So my first advice would be, I like to tell women, don't settle. You know your body, and if something doesn't feel right, don't accept what this person, a male who doesn't have female body parts, don't trust that he knows exactly what's going on with you. Make sure that you let them know. If they offer testing, get the test, whatever it is that you need to do to schedule it, get it done, don't delay. And then just trust your gut. You know how your body functions. You know when something's off. The whole 6 months in between my first visit and that diagnostic visit, I had that little voice in the back of my head that just kept telling me, and I kept squashing it because I thought, I'm going to trust the doctor. I'm going to trust the doctor. He knows better than I do. And I found out actually that he did not. So I think those are just the biggest things that we really try to advocate, especially for the rest of us, is just teaching young women. You don't have to shrink yourself. You have a voice. You need to use it. You need to ask questions. You need to order all the things. And if you don't know, then you need to find a community that can steer you to let you know what it is that you do need to ask for. But definitely don't settle, and always trust your gut.
Thank you so much. Yep, so important, especially I think we all have that, okay, well, they know, so they must be right. And what do I know, right? I'm not a specialist. These doctors go to,
Right.
medical school, residency, specialization. After specialization, they get their fellowships and all of that. So it's easy to listen to them instead of listening to your body, but trying to figure out, okay, something doesn't quite feel right. So thank you so much for pointing that out. And then Diah, did I say it properly this time?
You did.
Yes. Okay.
I want to add a layer to that. So April spoke to understanding your family history. Miranda spoke to basically owning your health and being self-aware. Another piece of that is, if you receive a diagnosis or, you have any symptoms, make sure that you keep in sight the desires of your heart, meaning that this diagnosis is not an end. And we spoke to that earlier. So when you're making decisions for your healthcare, think about your future, right? There's a lot of things that's going to be on your plate. You're making some of the most important decisions of your life, especially when you're dealing with breast cancer, but you want your physicians, anyone on your healthcare team to speak to you as a survivor and to speak to you as a person that has a future after the diagnosis. And that's very important. You don't want to receive treatment or get to a place in your journey where you regret, well, maybe I should have researched this, or maybe I should have considered, an alternative method. So present those things, and knowing your family history, owning your health empowers you to have those difficult conversations with not only your family, but with your medical team to make sure that your plan and any decisions you make are uniquely for you and what you want for the best quality of life for you.
like to just quickly piggyback that, Diah, that is so important. And again, this is why I think for the breast of us is so important, because you can find women who look like you, who have all these different unique stories. So what you know about breast cancer, you can toss that out the window because your journey is yours. Someone got double mastectomy versus lumpectomy versus whatever. You don't have to follow any certain path. Again, whatever is best for you is what you should choose to do. Of course, get all the information so you have all of the options. But at the end of the day, make the decisions that are best for you and that you feel comfortable with.
That's really important. And we have a question too from one of our attendees that says, if you're an introverted person, how do you get to, how do you answer, or how do you find your voice? Because, when you're an introverted person, some of us can talk, you've never met a stranger, you just kind of get in there and you are able to say what you think. But I remember, I think it was during childbirth, my mom was with me and something happened and I was like, ouch. And she said, well, that's not supposed to hurt. But she knew, right? I didn't know. It was my first time. I'd never done it before. So I was willing to live with the pain. And she was like, no, that is not supposed to hurt. You need to find a doctor. So for me, I had somebody who had experienced it before and was there with me and was able to sort of intervene as needed and speak up for me when I didn't know that I needed somebody to speak up for myself. How do y'all feel, that works? Would that work also for breast cancer?
I took my mama to the doctor sometimes. Sometimes it's, for one, it's a lot of information. You need another set of ears, but I am also a little bit introverted and I don't always speak up when necessary. But my mama has no problem with that. So again, she knew things, even though she never had breast cancer, but she knew to ask certain questions and she can read me. So if she knows I'm like, or I'm uncomfortable, she can speak up or say, repeat that again, or what about this? And so sometimes it's taking a battle buddy with you and finding that person who will go and be your set of ears, maybe help you take notes, but someone who's not afraid to speak up sometimes.
And notes are very important, Cynthia, with especially for an introvert. So when you don't want to speak, let's take it back, the old school pen and paper. So when you're alone and after those doctor's visits, you have tons of questions. So start to write those down. If you have a buddy that you can discuss those questions with, then they can join your doctor's appointment, or they can just join a call or help you get a list of those questions. So if you don't feel comfortable verbally saying, these are the things that I think about when I walk out of this doctor's office, there's a nurse there. Bring that tablet with you and she can walk through that tablet at the, he or she can walk through, or they can walk through the tablet with you at the beginning of your visit to know from one visit to the next, these are the things that are happening. So journaling is very important. Journaling is a way of self-care as a part of your mental wellness, but it's also a way of documenting your journey. And this will also help your medical team along the way as well.
Thank you so much. Those are such good pointers. Ms. Pearl is our program coordinator for the Breast Cancer Screening and Prevention Center at Texas Southern University. And she just chimed in and said a battle buddy will hear what the patient cannot hear. So anybody care to expand a little bit on that? Ms. Pearl herself is a survivor. And so when she says that, I know that she is speaking from experience. So April, can you tell us a little bit about a battle buddy? What's a battle buddy?
Absolutely. Like Cynthia, my mother and father actually went with me to all of my appointments as I was going through chemotherapy, after I had a bilateral mastectomy, and even up until I had a total hysterectomy. But I acted as a caregiver most recently for my aunt, who had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And she was older, she has since passed away. But I went with her because when she would go to her appointments with she and my uncle, she would always come back and call me and try to get me to answer questions from what they said, or she would try to send me pictures of documents they had sent her. So I started going with her to appointments and asking the questions I knew she didn't know to ask, and writing down the information and going through, logging into her portal, and also getting being added to her file to receive, you know, her test results and other information and communications from the doctors. And it was very helpful to her, but it could also become intimidating for the medical team, because, you know, sometimes if she had for so long been going by herself, and then one day I show up asking questions, it's like, whoa, you know, who is this? Who are you? And it was also, you know, kind of, they were very cold to me initially, because I think they thought that I was coming in there pointing fingers, when really I was coming in to try to get some questions answered for my aunt, to ensure the end of her life was, she had better quality of life. So a battle buddy is somebody who, you know, may not know what questions to ask, may not remember or even hear the things that are being stated by the doctor, and just writing down that information, as Nadia said, writing it down on using a pen and some paper, or as far as keeping up with, if you got somebody who's not technology proficient, doesn't know how to log into the online portal, doing that for them and sharing that information so that way they can be knowledgeable about what's happening with them as well. So it's just your support person, your emergency contact. Like I would call my parents my emergency contacts, would be in tow with me. So, or my entourage, either one. So that's who your battle buddy is.
Absolutely. No, that's really good to know and really good to hear. I think that if y'all don't mind, I want to pause for a second and just talk about what breast cancer is, right? I think, you know, we may have made a couple of assumptions starting, which is that everybody knows what breast cancer is, and that when we talk about screening and prevention, that everybody knows we're talking about mammograms. I just want to take a moment very quickly and talk about what breast cancer is. Well, any kind of cancer is a disease in which some of the body's cells grow uncontrollably and spreads to other parts of the body. Normally, your body can get rid of it, right? It notices something is wrong and it attacks it, gets rid of it, and then we never know it even happened. But sometimes those abnormal damaged cells can grow and multiply when they shouldn't, and those cells can form tumors, which are lumps of tissue. So that's where, you know, we talk about those lumps, right? And sometimes those tumors can be cancerous, sometimes they can be benign, and sometimes the only way to know is to biopsy or to test that tissue to be able to figure it out. The other thing that you may have heard is, oh, their cancer spread or it metastasized. So those tumors can just grow and travel to different parts of the body and form new tumors in other places. And baddies, stop me if there's something that we need to talk about in any, you know, that I don't say, just pause, just, you know, wave and I will pause and you can add to my slides. So I think what we wanted to focus on today really is this fact that up to 9% of breast cancer occurs in women under the age of 45. Like every baddie that we have here with us today, right? So up to 9%. Yes, that means the majority of cancer happens in older women, but this is a huge number. 1 out of every 10 women with breast cancer really is under the age of 45 when they're diagnosed. So when you look at, you know, the recommendations, that does not mean that that's the only people that it happens in. It just means that's the majority of the people it happens in, right? It is the most common cancer, and it does most commonly occur in older women. 1 out of every 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer in her life. So most of us have at least 8 women in our family, right? By the time you add like your first cousins, I have like 50,000 first cousins. So 1 out of every 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer in her life. Now, Cynthia helped put this slide together, and I so love it because I feel like a lot of the things that we see with breast cancer, those breasts don't look familiar. Okay, so I really love this as it sort of goes through the things that you see that should sort of say, hey, maybe something is wrong. And baddies, if you want to sort of weigh in and tell us if you're comfortable sharing which signs of breast cancer you had, if you're comfortable.
Sure, I can share. I had a small, maybe 2 centimeter lump in my left breast that we were monitoring with my primary care physician that changed in consistency from something that was squishy to something that felt more like a pea. And that's what triggered me to start to request the referral for a mammogram, given my age, from my primary care physician, and ultimately that second mammogram, and then the surgical biopsy that led to diagnostic and diagnosis.
Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else want to tell us what their symptoms were like?
I just wanted to say that this graphic is so important because I think a lot of women or people think that you just find a lump, like Nadia said, like a little pea-sized lump, but breast cancer can present in lots of different forms. For myself, similar to Nadia, I just had, it was about the size of maybe half of my pinky, and it felt kind of like a hard piece of meat, so kind of squishy but elongated, just on the, like just right here on the top of my breast. And then 6 months later, actually in my other breast, I had like a clogged milk duct, because I had children and I had breastfed, so I was familiar with the let down feeling if anyone has breastfed. Once they kind of figured out that that was the clogged duct, because my nipple was also inverted, which is another sign of breast cancer, we ruled that out, and then that kind of led to my diagnosis. But it's very, very important, yes, that women become extremely familiar with their breast, because it does present in all these different ways. Lumpy skin, discharge. I knew a woman who had, just before she was diagnosed, her breast was almost like flat on the top and just long, like it was like almost like it was squished and it just hung down, and just very strange. I mean, if your breast is not looking like it's supposed to look like, then obviously that's an issue that needs to be checked.
Well, thank you so much. Yes, I think we all hear lumps all the time. You're right. We hear check for lumps, but there are more things that it could be. April, did you want to share?
Yes, I actually knew something was wrong because I was in excruciating pain. And after speaking with, just kind of fast forward a little bit, about a year before I was diagnosed, I had experienced like a rash in the same spot where later the tumors were found. And I went to urgent care. At that time, I didn't have a primary care doctor because I was young, I was healthy. I didn't need a primary care doctor to see. I just needed to go and get my annual exams, and that's it. So I went to urgent care, and they said, well, they gave me some kind of name, and I guess the rash was also on my back. But after speaking to my oncologist, he was saying that was probably the first sign that something was going on with my body. So I was in excruciating pain, and it was like, I was like, heat was radiating off of that side of my body. There also, I did eventually feel a lump, but the pain is what sent me to go and get checked, because I thought maybe at first, okay, maybe my body's changing, maybe I'm just experiencing some pain in my breast due to, my menstruation as I'm getting older, and it just intensified as time went by. So that was a different, I guess that was a different tell sign than just looking for a lump.
Absolutely. And then one of our partners at the Rose is participating in our webinar today, and just mentioned, hey, some there are no symptoms yet, right? When you're at stage 0 or stage 1, which is the most curable state, that's when you want to find it because you can get rid of it before it spreads. But some of those are really only detectable on a mammogram. So being able to remember, even if you don't have any of these symptoms, that a mammogram can still be helpful. Now, we all know that, healthcare is limited as a resource. So if you are not 40 yet and you don't have symptoms, you more than likely will not have your mammogram covered unless you have a reason to. Maybe you have, the gene or whatever, but I don't want you to go try to get a mammogram and not be able to get that covered with your insurance. But we are also going to talk about some options if you are in the Houston, Texas area, or really if you're in the Texas area, we do have some options for you for being able to get your screening. Nadia, you raised your hand.
Yes, I wanted to speak to the stage 0 and stage 1 that was just mentioned in the chat. So as an early stage survivor, so I was actually diagnosed as stage 0. I did find my lump. So sometimes when we mean stage 0, it may mean that, it was still within my duct. So it had not spread, but still considered stage 0. But I did have a symptom, which is that small lump. And as I said, the earlier you find these things, it is before it has, metastasized throughout your body or even spread throughout your ducts into other breast tissue, right? But it is important that we understand, the stages when we say stage 0 or stage 1 or stage 2 or stage 3. So stage 0 are, they are those early stages. And as they advance, you go up to stage 4, in which metastatic thrivers and survivors are considered. Some of them are that's interchangeable. You may hear metastatic and or stage 4. So I wanted, for those that were in the audience that may not have understood when we were saying stage 1 and stage 0, what that means. I just wanted to take a pause and just speak to that for a moment.
No, thank you so much. That's very good information. I don't know that I was as familiar with stage 0, so I think it's very important to point that out. All right. Risk factors for breast cancer, and we've already touched on a couple of these. So we talked about age. The older you are, the more likely it is, but we do know that younger women, just like the 4 of you, can be diagnosed early. We talked about the genetic components. So Cynthia and April have a strong family history. Gender. So men can also have breast cancer. And that's something that a lot of men are not familiar with, or a lot of people are not familiar with. But if you do have the gene, especially if you have the genetics, men can also have breast cancer. And then this part that seems a little unfair, but if you have a personal history of breast cancer, you're also more likely to have breast cancer in the future. Anything you want to sort of add to this point?
I'd like to add with genetics. So one of the things that's not really explained, and you kind of mentioned it earlier, that all of us have genes in our body that fight cancer off. So for me, I have my grandmother who is 100 years old. She was diagnosed with breast cancer after having children in her mid-40s. So at that time, there was no genetics testing done. And she has 4 daughters, and 3 of her 4 daughters were diagnosed with either breast or reproductive cancers. And one daughter was diagnosed with colon cancer, which is also tied to breast cancer for certain genes. So one of my aunts actually had the testing done, and there's only 7 places in the United States that does genetics testing. And her results were on file at the same place where my genetics test was sent. So BRCA1 positive means that I am the BRCA1 gene in my family and myself has a mutation. It's deformed. It prevents from fighting cancer. That's why it developed in my grandmother's body, in my aunt's body. My dad is my grandmother's son. So it actually passed down from my father to me. So just wanted to give a further explanation of what does it mean to be BRCA1 positive or BRCA2 positive. BRCA1 positive means that you're at a higher risk of developing breast or ovarian cancers. BRCA2 positive means that you are at a higher risk for the same, but also pancreatic cancers as well. So just want to give that understanding because everybody doesn't understand that cancer is in everybody's body, but we already have the genes to fight it off. The mutation, or where there's a breakdown in that gene where it can't fight it off, is where the cancer developed. And that's where it is usually because of family history, something that is passed down the line.
I just also wanted to add that I had both a maternal and a paternal aunt who had breast cancer prior to me. And a year after I was diagnosed, my eldest sister was diagnosed. But on paper, via genetic testing, we have no genetic component. So I just want people to understand that you can have symptoms, not have symptoms, have genetics, not genetics. But again, 1 in 8. And can't be said enough, the outcomes for women who look like us, women of color, young women, are worse. So I want you to take all of this together and just be deliberate about your health, not just for cancer, but for all of your health.
That's very, very important. And sort of the premise of the Texas Southern University Breast Cancer Screening and Prevention Center. So what we want to do, I'm just going to sort of skip a couple in the interest of time, but what we really want to be able to do today is talk about breast cancer in African-American women and what we can do to try to reduce it. Okay, so breast cancer in African-American women, breast cancer in our Hispanic and Latina women is something that we need to be able to talk about. And we've talked about sort of some of the reasons why we can't have these conversations as easily. But I think that what we really want to be able to accomplish is early screening. And the goal of screening is to catch cancer early. Our partner, the Rose, said that they're diagnosing women in their 20s almost every month, and they are located here in Houston. So it's important that women in their 20s know that this is a possibility and it could happen. Our youngest diagnosis on our panel today is 33, and that is a very long way from 40. The earlier breast cancer is detected, the higher the chance of survival. And I think Diah mentioned that best. You know, you can catch it at stage 0, stage 1, your outcomes are better. And so screening is done through mammograms, and we do have funding from the state of Texas to provide no-cost screening and diagnostic services to ethnic minority women who are uninsured or underinsured. So uninsured, everybody knows what that means, but underinsured just means your copays are prohibitive, right? When you want to go get that screening done, you think to yourself, do I have enough time? You know, what's my copay going to be? And can I afford that copay? So you may have insurance, but it's not insurance that you're willing to really use because it's too expensive for you to use insurance that you have. Okay, so we consider you underinsured if that's the case. We will provide no-cost screening and diagnostic services for you, and we will follow you through your diagnosis. We have a program coordinator who was a breast cancer survivor, but we also have a patient navigator who will walk with you through the process. Hopefully, you know, all the way on until diagnosis is what our grant funds, but we will hand you off to somebody who will help you with the treatment portion. Okay, we are also available for breast cancer awareness and education needs. And you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. And we also have a link tree that has links to all the resources that we have available. We want you to be able to reach out to us to have those conversations. I know we have about 5 minutes left, but I want to turn it back over to the baddies and say, you know, anybody who happens to be listening today, regardless of their age, regardless of their gender, regardless of their race, what do you want them to take away from our conversation today? What is the one thing you want them, if they don't remember anything else that we talked about today, what's the one thing you want them to remember? I will start with Diah.
I think the one thing I want them to know is there is power in understanding your body and power in educating yourself on not just breast cancer, but any, any illnesses that may impact you and or your family. So having that information when you walk into those initial doctor's visits helps you form that voice.
Thank you so much. That's really important. One thing I do just in general is I write the doctor before I go in, because I'm outspoken except for when I'm not. So I send them a my chart message that says, when I see you, these are the things I want us to discuss, because I know that I'll forget, I'll get overwhelmed. Or do you ever feel bad for the doctor? I feel bad for the doctor, because a lot of times there are a lot of people waiting for them. They're coming, they're going, they're whatever. And I'm like, I don't want to bother them. It's not, my problem is not that important, and then I end up not bringing up the things that I really need to bring up to talk about. So, okay, making sure you write it down on a piece of paper, wherever it is, so that you're able to remember what is important to you when you get in there and start thinking, oh, they are too busy to talk to me about that today, right?
And to add on to that, that kind of reframing that you mentioned, oh, I feel like I'm bothering the doctor, but guess what? That's your time. So walk in there with the attitude, this is my time. And I want to make sure that we are using my time to benefit me. So you're not bothering them. They are servants, and they are there. That's what they want to do. They want to help you. They should want to help you. So when you walk in there, don't feel like you're a bother. Feel like this is my time, and I have time with this medical provider to discuss what's important to me, which is my health.
That's a really good way to frame it. Thank you. I needed that just in general for my regular visits. April, what do you want to leave us with today?
I would like to leave everyone with this. Our lives are not our own. There are many people who love us and who depend on us, and not to allow the fear of the unknown to prevent us from taking care of ourselves. We can't take care of others if we don't take care of ourselves first. So do your monthly exams of checking your breast, under your armpits, around your neck. That's also where breast tissue is found as well. Making sure you keep your regular doctor appointments. And I've had so many people say to me, I'm too busy. I have to do this. I have to do that. And we have to slow ourselves down, and we have to take care of ourselves. And if that's not motivating enough, just think about the lives who you impact, and let that be your motivator to make sure you keep up with your appointments and taking care of yourself.
Thank you so much, April. That's really important, especially what you said about the breast tissue not only being in that concentrated area that you call your breast, because I think one of the pictures actually showed like the armpit too. So I think that's super, super important. Thank you so much for pointing that out. Miranda?
Well, first, I'd like to say we're not statistics. You can breastfeed and you can be at your perfect weight. You cannot drink, you cannot smoke, and this can still happen to you. I fell kind of in all those categories and I still had breast cancer. I didn't have a history. So you're not a statistic. If something doesn't feel right, then just make sure that you get it addressed. And I think also, especially being women of color, we have this, we're kind of scared to speak up because we don't want to be seen as the angry Black woman or the fiery Latina. You know, we want our doctors to like us because we think if we're meek and we're quiet, that they're going to be more likely to, give us, extra stuff, extra attention. And I had a friend tell me that you're a team. This doctor is working with you, for you. They are not your friend. They might be your friend at some point later on, but this is a job. They go to work to do this job, and you're a team, and they need to make sure that you need to make sure that you're addressing everything that you need to address, and not be worried about what they think about you. Don't worry about if the doctor thinks that you're difficult, or you're always coming in asking a lot of questions. That's what you're supposed to do. It's your job. At the end of the day, you're going home with your body. They're not going home with your body. So just, we need to let that stuff go out the window and just speak up, whether we're introverted or not. And was very introverted. So that stuff shouldn't even, we have to let it go. Like, really,
I absolutely love that. They are a part of your team, and ultimately they really need you to have a positive outcome. They really want you to have a positive outcome. So they are part of your team. They are there for you, for your health, for your well-being. So being able to sort of keep that in mind and know that that's something that that you can own and be able to have that conversation. And finally, Miss Cynthia is there. Would you leave us, please, with something you want us to take away from today's conversation?
So my baddies know I'm the crybaby. So I'm gonna try not to get emotional, but find your community, and find that community now. You and your girls, you and your boys, you and your family should be talking candidly about health. Your girls, like Miss Miranda, make sure I'm not the most compliant patient, but Miranda will make sure that you go to the doctor, that you're doing what you're supposed to do. But talk about it. We talk about, this is breast cancer, and of course our focus is that. But fellas, fill yourself up. Know your complete normal, whatever your body looks like, whatever your body is made up of, so that you know when things are different, because that can make all of the difference. And again, just find your tribe. It makes all the difference in the world to have people around you who know what you're going through, who have walked the walk, and who are going to be by your side for the long haul. And so just be intentional about your health. And I wish it was as easy as, oh, we're young, we have time for this. But especially for people of color, not only are we getting it earlier, sooner, but our outcomes are not the greatest. We die at rates 5, 6, 7 times greater than our white counterparts. And so it's important that we are intentional about our health as soon as we are able, and that we have the voice to ask questions. So if you're uninsured, underinsured, don't know where to start, cost is a factor. Ask the questions, reach out, find that community so that you can have access to all of the resources that are out there, and don't let anything stand in the way of taking control of your health.
Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you are here and you are wondering whether you should get a mammogram, please reach out to us. We are at TSU Breast Center. Please reach us. We are happy to talk to you, walk you through, schedule you. We have partnerships with multiple organizations that can assist us with getting you screened. Again, please don't let cost be a factor. There are a lot of good comments in the chat box. Dr. Ware is, she's a pharmacist, so she knows about insurance. And she said, with her insurance, her screening with an ultrasound would have been up to $700 or over $700. And the receptionist was able to help her pay out of pocket for $300. So, have these conversations. Ask when they say, oh, it's going to be $700. It's okay to say, I don't have that, but I do want this to happen. what resources do we have that can help. But contact us. We are here to support you through this. Just to get screened, make sure that the cost doesn't stand in the way of you getting that screening done. We want to walk you through it. If you're, don't let fear of breast cancer itself prevent you from getting screened, because as you can see, if you are diagnosed and you are positive with us, we will hook you up with the baddies, and they have a support system already waiting for you. So we don't wish it on you, but if that is what it is, we want you to take the steps anyway and do what you need to do to get yourself healthy and healed. We have other resources, other comments. There's so much to talk about with breast cancer in the chat. Different screening types, different types of tests where you can screen, where you can do the diagnostic, and where you can have surveillance after you have the diagnosis. We help with the screening and the diagnostic piece. So please reach out to us if you need that. I do know that with insurance, with my insurance, if it's screening, it's free. But once you say, I am here because I think I may have breast cancer, then it's no longer considered a screening. So the words you use, even when you are making an appointment, is very important. So just go in for a regular screening. If you are over the age of 40, then it is once a year. Usually your insurance will pay for as preventative, but call them and just see what is covered and what's not covered. And Cynthia has posted for information for the rest of us. They do have a podcast as well. And you can look for the podcast, Baddie to Baddie or Baddie Behavior, available anywhere where you listen to podcasts. So with that, I would like to ask if you could please complete our survey. We have both the English and Spanish versions, and just let us know what you thought of our webinar today. And we want to get better. We want to provide you with information that you need. So if you can, please complete those surveys for us. And if, let me see, sorry, before we go very quickly, Cynthia has her hand up. Cynthia, what do you want to tell us?
I put it in the chat, but just a reminder for the rest of us is not just a community for survivors and thrivers. If you're looking to get educated, looking to learn more about breast cancer, we have a huge community of Black, Latina, Indian, Asian, all types of breast cancer and all types of different treatment and options. And so please, if you have any questions, reach out to For the Rest of Us, to me, to anybody on this panel, and we'll steer you in the right direction.
Okay, thank you so much. And if we can give our panel a virtual round of applause for just taking the time, your precious time, and I know everybody's time is so precious these days. So thank you so much for taking the time to come and just generously donate your time to help other women. And really, you're trying to help other women not go through what you went through. Isn't that amazing? So thank you so much. Thank you. I see claps in the chat. I really appreciate it. Y'all have been a wonderful panel. And thank you all as well to the audience. Thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the last day of May. Tomorrow is June. All right, thank you.